At this place in history, we're in Burlington with Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, Steve Perkins. What are we doing out here today?
So we're on the corner of Winooski and Pearl in downtown Burlington, and we're going to talk beer. So Burlington's got this great brewing history, and did you know it goes all the way back to the early 19th century? So Jeff Baker, who is a co-author of a new book on the brewing industry in Burlington, is going to talk to us about what this all means.
So Jeff, what brings us to this spot in particular then, this corner of Pearl and Winooski?
Well, Amanda, this spot was the site of the first Burlington brewery. Daniel Standiford opened a brewery here in 1800, circa 1800. He sold it in about 1830.
What was beer like in the early 1800s? I imagine it's so different than what we know it is today.
Yeah, beer was definitely a different industry then. You got to think about beer as a source of stored calories. Beer wasn't really prized for its alcohol then. It was prized for vitamins and a source of energy. And when he built the brewery here, it's really close to UVM, and there was a reason for that, because they had cheap calories for the students. You know, we think about breweries near a university now, we think about keg parties and things like that, but it was really part of the daily food system then.
And speaking of the food system, so this was supported by local agriculture as well. I mean, I'm assuming that the ingredients for that beer came from the local area?
Yeah, they all the ingredients were sourced locally. In fact, the brewers would put out advertisements in the local newspaper looking for grains and hops. When the grain stocks ran out, that was it for the season and the brewery was done.
And now I seem to remember reading in the book something about, we talk about women brewing beer, and this is something that was a tradition in the 19th century and some evidence for that right here in Burlington.
That's right, actually, yeah. A lot of women were the brewers. It was considered a domestic task on the farm. A lot of farms had breweries, and so you see a lot of female brewers then, and now Burlington actually is home to a lot of female brewers again.
Brewing started to peter out in Burlington in the late 19th century. Why is that?
Well, around 1853, Vermont actually went dry. Prohibition hits Vermont at a state level much sooner than it hit at the national level.
What was the reason behind Prohibition in Vermont at that time?
You get the temperance movement really moved in hard in Vermont. Productivity started going down. People are starting to look at the workers, and you know they're drinking a little bit too much to be productive. So there's a big temperance movement in the mid-1800s in Burlington. It gets a little ironic though, because as people were running on the Prohibition ticket, they're throwing essentially parties and giving out beer. So there's a lot of corruption that happened during that time too.
Wow.
And so brewing kind of shut down here 1870s, and we didn't see brewing come back again really until almost the modern era, right?
That's right. Burlington went almost 100 years without a brewery. The first brewery to come back to Burlington was Vermont Pub and Brew, and that opened in 1988.
At this place in history,